The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Yes, coming to you cordless, everybody. It's Monday night, August 11th, 2025. I am Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 263. Mark your score, blah, 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 blah. Mark your scorecards at home. We'll have a test someday. I don't know when. We will. Someday we're going to have a test. Maybe when we have like several million viewers one night. I don't know. We'll have a test. And I'll quiz you on what happened on episode number 122, because I don't know either. I have no idea. It all blends together at this point. Speaking of blending together, we have two guests tonight. We have, first off, Gregory Whitestone. Jesus, Jim. Gregory Wrightstone is the executive director of the CO2 Coalition. They are an organization of about 200 scientists who exist to try to convince you, the general public, that human-caused climate change is complete crap. Now, if you've watched this show at all, there's two things. I'm devoting my life to two missions. One is to convince you, the general public, that the extraterrestrials are completely coming here. That is an undisputed fact at this point. And you can say, well, Jim, how can you say that? I'll tell you I can say that. I think that a typical year now, this is the United States alone, not even the rest of the world. There's about 150,000 reported UFO sightings. That's when somebody tells somebody, like the police or MUFON or somebody. There's about 150,000 of them. Now, I've said this before too. 95% of those reports are bogus. It's not so much that people are lying, they're just mistaken, mostly. There are some hoaxes, there are some liars, but generally people think they see something in the sky, and that's not what they see. But 95% or 5% of 150,000 is 7,500, and there's 7,500 real UFO sightings. 7,500. Now, those are just the people that report them. So that's just one single statistic I have. Yeah, I got a cat running around here. You just have to trust me on this. No, you don't. You shouldn't trust me because I should present evidence, but there's plenty of it. And we talk about it here constantly. Anyway, that's number one. Number two, I want to devote my time to convincing you, gentle viewer, that climate change, human-caused climate change, is complete bullshit. It's total bullshit. And you'll hear about that in the next few minutes from Mr. Wrightstone. After that, our next guest is Bill Walton, former CEO of Allied Capital, and he's a host of the Bill Walton Show, and he's actually on the board of said CO2 Coalition, which is not actually the reason we had him on today. He came on in the last minute as a fill-in for another guest who at the last minute couldn't make it. But I love Bill, and we get on well, so we had a really good conversation. And because of this, normally when we have two guests now, and we're starting to book two guests more and more, where in September it's going to be a regular thing. Normally, I would separate those two guests with a little Jimcast thing where I talk about all the crazy crap in the news. But because these guests are so intertwined, they both refer to each other. I'm going to play this all the way through. So the only thing that's going to separate these two interviews is a bumper. That's it. And then we're going to do our weird news at the end. That's the way we're going to handle that tonight. Tomorrow night, UFO experiencer and history professor Bruce Solheim is coming back. This will be his third appearance on the show. I talked about this before, but God in heaven, you have to. So you think I'm paranoid? You think now get a load of this. He was on, I think, in June, or maybe it was April. Anyway, he was on earlier this year. That show, now we broadcast this show live on 6 different outlets, and each one of them records the show and playback for their own archives. In other words, you can go to any of them. This was like, I mean, I'll be honest, we don't have a lot of viewers on Twitch or Trovo. We don't, but we do. We're on there, and you go there, you can see our shows after the fact, after they broadcast live. And Bruce came on live. We didn't even pre-record that. Like these 2 interviews we're doing tonight, we pre-recorded this afternoon, and we're going to start doing more and more of that too, because more and more people are having a hard time connecting to our studio. And as far as we don't know why. The internet is being overused. I don't really know what's going on here. I don't, but we're having more and more problems with people connecting to our studio. And by we can work that out if they're not doing it live. I think it took a good 10 minutes for Bill Walton to connect tonight. But Bruce comes on live, so he came on the show live, like I said, about 3 months ago, and that show was, and then that show was not recorded anywhere on our 6 platforms. And get a load of this. Not only that, the local backup we record in our studio while the show is going live, that recording didn't work either. And it's not so much that these things didn't record, but in all 7 instances, 7 times, all 7 times, we had blank files. In other words, and you can still if you go to like Rumble and play Bruce Solheim's show, and I'm sure off the top of my head, I don't know what the date was, but if you play it, there's a file there, it's blank. There's nothing on it, no sound, no picture. It runs for the extended time, about an hour and a half, whatever it is, but there's nothing there. We don't know why. We don't know how this happened. Now, Bruce will tell you, and he'll talk about it tomorrow night too, because that's one of the reasons we have on, that he's been communicating with an extraterrestrial named Anzar his entire life, since he was a boy, since he was an adolescent. And he still talks to Anzar, he says, about once a week. And of course, that's, weird. You would probably think so, not knowing Bruce. But I have a good friend of mine who watches the show who doesn't buy any of the UFO stuff we put on at all. He thinks it's all complete, utter crap. And he said, that guy, I believe. And that's the thing with Bruce. I mean, that's the reason we want to have him on. He has outlandish things to say, but coming out of him, they're very believable. He's been a history professor at Citrus College in Glendora, California for I think 26 years now. He's written 11 books, not all of them on ETs and UFOs, but he's written, I don't know how many, maybe about 4 or 5 are on ETs. He did write a book specifically about talking to Anzar called Anzar the Progenitor, and I read that book. I don't have time to read 11 books from one guest. I don't, but I did read that one. And it was fascinating. And basically, it's a log over the course of like 10 years of all the conversations he had with Anzar. Anyway, he's coming back because we literally do not have that show anywhere. Even our local recording here in our studio failed. And God said, we can't figure out why. The only possible thing I can think of is that, and we asked Anzar what happened. And this is what, and Anzar said this too. We played a cut of a song Bruce wrote. He's also has a country western band. He wrote a song and had AI score it. There's AI music programs where they will actually do a recording of your song. And I played that during the interview at the top mostly. And I don't know if that triggered some, Anzar said he didn't think so, but I think it might have, because there's no copyright problem per se, but I don't know if the copyright filters can actually know that. But that maybe somehow that triggered something and it erased the whole file. I don't know, in 7 different places. I can't think. It's the only thing different about that interview than all the hundreds of others we've done. This is our 263rd show, and we did working at Conk News, which unfortunately, rest in peace, and just went out of business last month. We did about 400 shows there. And that's the first time this has happened. Although at Conk News we did strictly audio only. This is the video has been since I started here, at Jim Peters Tonight. Anyway, that's where we're having Bruce back. It's kind of a makeup show, so I'm sure we'll talk about that and other stuff, and we'll see how Anzar's doing. I mean, I can't even remember where Anzar's from, but he knows. He says, the specific planet and specific star system. Oh my God, this stuff's getting so crazy. I saw a video on YouTube this weekend about a guy who said that he handles crash retrievals for the U.S. military. Now, I mean, I'm watching this. I watch I got to admit, I can't tell if this guy's telling the truth or not. Usually I seem to have some feeling. I'm kind of 50-50 on this guy, but I can't remember his name. But anyway, what he says has been said by other people and seems to make sense. They have an extreme rapid response team that they can get to any crash in the U.S. Oh, he said the world even within like maybe 10 minutes. If usually they know where they're coming down because they're tracking them with radar. So, and then also Michael Schratt, who was booked on this show about a couple of years ago when we started, and he at the last minute he couldn't do it, and we were able to get him back since. But he said that he is aware that the government has. I have said that we have at least 9 crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. Hal Puthoff said we have 10. He's a physicist and he works for the government. He just said that a couple of weeks ago. But Schratt and this guy, whose name I can't remember, said we have about 117. So, God, who knows? It's just so complicated. It's unbelievable. Anyway, Bruce is coming on tomorrow. Bruce Solheim. Wednesday, our old friend Tim Conaway, the former executive editor of Hustler magazine in the 80s and 90s at its height. That's his claim to fame, and he'll regale us with stories of dealing with models in the newsroom. What a life. Crazy. Oh man. He talked to anyway, and we'll get his take on some stuff tonight. Now we're taking Thursday off. This Thursday too. We're taking next Thursday off also. And then we're taking the whole last week of this month off, getting ready for September. And we run reruns 5 nights a week at 9 p.m. Eastern in our live slot. If we don't have a show, we run a rerun. It's like I'm Carson. I know I'm working 3 days a week. I know. So we're not taking any calls tonight either. We're going to take calls on Wednesday night. Wednesday night with Conaway, we're going to take calls. So with that, without any further ado, let's bring on Gregory Wrightstone is his name, not Whitestone, Wrightstone. Okay, we can do that. We can do this. I got this. Trust me. Joining us from his office in Fairfax, Virginia, Gregory Whitestone. He's the executive director of the CO2 Coalition and a professional geologist. And I got to ask you about that. But first of all, before we even start here, Gregory, I have to tell you. So other than the money and all the other crap, I have 2 personal missions with this show. One is to inform the public that there's overwhelming evidence that the extraterrestrials are actually coming here, and I don't need your opinion on that either way, because we're not discussing that today. And the second thing is to point out to the public that human-caused climate change is a complete and utter grift. It's a hoax. And that's what your, more or less, your organization does, correct?
Well, we provide the science, the facts, and the data about climate change, and more specifically, carbon dioxide, which
right.
they call it the demon molecule. We call it the
no, Gregory. I even saw some of your in some of your blog posts. They call it pollution.
Yeah, well, that's not anymore. Yeah, well, that was called the endangerment finding in 2009. The Obama EPA determined that CO2, carbon dioxide, was a pollutant, and because it was, they could regulate it, and boy, have they. So this new announcement by Lee Zeldin at the EPA is repealing the endangerment finding, which is huge. And with the endangerment finding, meant they could regulate everything that produces carbon dioxide. They could force you to buy electric vehicles. They could regulate everything. All of your viewers, look around you. Look around at everything that's using electricity, from the ceiling fan above you to the washer and dryer in your kitchen, or in your laundry room, your dishwasher. All of these appliances have been regulated using this endangerment finding. And what it's done is restricted your viewers' ability and freedoms to choose which appliance they might want to buy. Now the only appliances and dishwashers you're allowed to buy are those that have been approved by the government. They're government approved dishwashers, government approved shower heads. It's all over this crazy aversion to the miracle molecule carbon dioxide. Uh, my new book is the title is A Very Convenient Warming.
I,
How
I'm
mo-
I'm
how
going to put it
mod
on the screen. Here we go. Yeah, go ahead.
A very convenient warming. How modest warming and more CO2 are benefiting humanity, and I call this the greatest untold story of the 21st century, that of an Earth and its ecosystems that are thriving and prospering, and the human conditions improving because of what they're telling you is causing a crisis. No, it's improving because of modest warming and more CO2. We look at the more CO2 is driving vegetation growth and crop growth. Crop productivity is reaching record-breaking amounts year after year after year from the warmest nations to the coldest nations. That's a good thing. That's turbocharged increases in temperature. Are we in a warming trend? Yes, you're darn right we are.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
No, and
Uh,
that should be pointed out. And I always point that out to the public. No, the global warming is real. The world is warming up, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Right. Go ahead.
right, and they're saying it's being driven by increase in carbon dioxide. That's a greenhouse gas that's warming temperatures to unprecedented, unusual levels. That's completely false. The warming trend that we're in right now started more than 300 years ago in the
Right.
depths of what was called the Little Ice Age. So the first 250 or 220 years of that warming trend had to be entirely natural because
Yes.
we weren't adding CO2 to the atmosphere until it was really the mid 20th century in that post World War II economic boom is really when we started adding a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere. So what they're saying is, well, it warmed for 200 years and it was all natural, but that's all changed now in the middle of the 20th century. Now it's all being driven by us. No, it's not. It's just stupid. And the other thing that's rarely, actually never talked about, unless you're hearing me on a different show, is that one of the great things I love to talk about is to tie human history to climate history. And if we look back to the first great civilizations, uh, human civilizations and empires that arose. It was during what was called the Minoan warm period, one of the three previous warming periods. All three were warmer than we are today, by the way. But those great civilizations rose up: the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Hittites, the Harappan Empire in the Indus River Valley. These great civilizations rose up, thrived. Food was bountiful, and it was a lot warmer than it is today. And then it started getting cold. And that led into what was called the Greek Dark Ages, which were horrific. And this cold temperature led to what was called the Late Bronze Age collapse. You don't believe me? Just Google that, Late Bronze Age collapse, and you can find out what it is. And this cold led to crop failure, famine, pestilence, and mass depopulation. And so we see this repeated time after time. The next great warming period was the Roman Empire, the time of Jesus Christ, uh, which then led into the cold of the Dark Ages, which then warmed up into the beneficial parts of the medieval warm period, which then led into another horrifically cold, probably the coldest temperatures of the last 10,000 years was this little ice age that went from
Yeah.
the year 1250 to about the year
Well,
1850.
generally, Gregory, I mean, you basically just said this. On balance, the world has done better when it's been warmer. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. And this is disputed. If you look at Al Gore, Greta Thunberg, John Kerry, the whole alarmist bunch of those, they would call me a climate change denier.
well, they call me that too, so I understand. Right.
Right. But I would call them history deniers because they're denying what history actually tells us. History tells us that we should welcome the warmth and fear the cold. Warmth has always been proven to be hugely beneficial to humanity, and it is this time. In fact, what they want to hide and hide from you is that they tell you that heat and heat waves are killing people at an unprecedented rate, which absolutely is categorically false. The greatest heat waves in North America occurred 80, 90 years ago in the in the 1920s and 30s. Just finished up a Texas report. We looked at Texas specific data. The number of days, percentage of days in Texas that were over 100 degrees are in decline, not increase. Nobody knows that because they want to hide it.
Yeah, the other thing is, even if they were increasing, so what? And I'll be honest, Mr. Wrightstone. Sometimes I think that you and your ilk are a little too generous and a little too rational. You call Kerry Gore and Sundberg, climate change, whatever you did. I call them idiots. They're just, these people are just stupid. I've had Mark Morano on the show, and we were talking about that. I don't know. Few people have benefited from the climate change grift more than Al Gore, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. He literally doesn't know what he's talking about. Just like, I'm just going to come straight out. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm talking about here. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, Al Gore took one science class at college and he got a D in it.
Yeah, right.
And of course, Greta Thunberg didn't even graduate from high school, but where she's supposed to be an expert.
Right.
And so is Al Gore. These people are just, you called it correctly. It's the climate grift. There are trillions of dollars sitting out there, liable to be made by these people. And for sure they're raking it in. But this all is changing now with there's a new sheriff in town, and he's put together some really great deputies at the EPA, Chris Wright at Energy, and others, and they're making a difference. And we're actually being able to get our science, not our science, it's the science, the facts, the science, the data. And that's what we do here at the CO2 Coalition, that my colleagues and I, we put out, we're nearly 200 strong scientists that are promoting the facts about carbon dioxide and what's actually going on.
You're the third person from your coalition I've had on the show. I've had both Patrick Moore and Bill Walton on previously. You guys are doing great work. Well, how did we get to I'll tell you though, one thing that you're talking about, the new sheriff in town and things going better. One thing that I'm not certain is going better is simply the fact that there's the public has been inundated with these falsehoods about science, and it's going to be very, very hard to turn this around, which is one of the things I'm personally trying to do. Just trying to convince the average person that climate change or human-caused climate change is bullshit is going to be a huge thing.
Well, you may be right. I've been a huge optimist for many years. I saw this coming many years ago, and actually I think it's turning really quickly. And I think it really could, because when I talk to people and provide them the science, the facts, and the data about what's actually going on, they're often their eyes open. Why have we never been told this? Just about everybody I talk to, if they look at my book, they look at the information, and they go, well, how can that be? And the problem has been for us is we've been silenced. Me and my colleagues at the CO2 Coalition and the other brave scientists we've been silenced. We've been kept absolutely we need to stay silent. They needed to keep us quiet. They needed to keep us silent, because if the truth got out, it's game over for the climate industrial complex. So we're getting our message out there. My latest book, A Very Convenient Warming, has been doing very well. My first book title was Inconvenient Facts, that sold upwards of 100,000 copies. It was a #1 bestseller, off and on for many years. Still does very well.
Was the #1 book on climate change on Amazon, if I'm right.
Many times.
I'm going to share a little story with you that I've shared on the show several times before. This is how I personally ended up going down the rabbit hole on this. This is about 12 years now. I can't remember the actual year. About 12 years ago, I was at the Christmas party for a very large scientific organization. And I can't tell you what the organization was, and I can't tell you why I was there. But anyway, it's a Christmas party, and there's about 200 scientists in this large room, and everyone's getting kind of drunk, right? And I'm at the bar. I'm at the bar with with a leading climatologist in the United States. Guy teaches at a major university. He's famous in his field. The public doesn't know his name, but he's famous in his field. And I'm sitting there and I'm drinking with him. And I said to him, Professor, tell me about climate change. And he slams his drink down in the bar and says, yeah, I'll tell you about climate change. Climate change is complete, utter bullshit. And he goes on this 20-minute monologue about, and this is to your point, sir, about how he says we can't get any funding for anything unless we acknowledge that this bullshit actually exists. And it doesn't.
That's right.
And that was his primary complaint. He was having to deal with basically a permanent falsehood. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And that started I know enough about science to question this already, but this guy said this. I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, this is crap.
Right. Well, that is true. But now the funding has been removed for a lot of this. And so that incentive may have just gone away, at least until the end of the Trump administration, thankfully. They're pulling back, firing scientists at NOAA, some of this crap at the Department of Energy and NASA. They've all been corrupted by this climate crisis agenda. You would think that NASA, NOAA, and all these other institutions were pure as the driven snow, and they're not. If you go to the EPA website, or if you just search for 2 words, EPA and heat waves. Well, actually, that's 3 words technically, but you'll get a chart showing heat wave index. Chris Lee Zeldin needs to take this thing down. It's horrible, and it shows heat wave indexes, and it shows skyrocketing heat wave indexes of all kinds. But you have to dive deep into the text to find out that it's not really heat index for the United States. It's heat indexes for the 50 largest metropolitan areas, which are corrupted terribly by the urban heat island effect.
Right.
We know that they've artificially been getting warmer and warmer and warmer through the decades.
Right.
But that's how they lie to. It's scientific malfeasance is what it is.
And so are they lying for the money mostly?
Yeah, why are they doing it's money because they need the funding. They need the funding. There are people making a lot of money on it. Is our solar panel subsidies good? Yeah, they are if you make solar panels or install them. But otherwise, anybody else, we're paying to have all those solar panels put on top of people's homes. And the wind turbines those subsidies are going away. Donald Trump's revoking offshore, thankfully, licenses along the East Coast and in the Gulf Coast, and so thankfully he's doing that. It's a blight on our environment. These don't call them solar farms. They're not farms. They're industrial scale facilities. And one of the things I also talk about, or if you look at extinctions, there are claims that we're entering the 6th great extinction because of excess carbon dioxide and heating. And again, that's just false. Just the opposite is occurring. That extinctions are significantly declining beginning in the early 20th century. But there was a UN report that falsely proclaimed the other. One thing in that report, though, that I do agree is they said that endangered species, the greatest threat to them was loss of habitat. And it is. What's their solution to cure this false climate crisis? Pave over thousands of acres of square miles of grasslands and farmlands, put up solar installations at industrial scale, cut down mature forests in order to put up wind turbines. No, it's crazy. 15,000 bald eagles killed a year by wind turbines, and it's approved.
And millions of birds just generally, and I hate these things, and mostly because I have no problem personally, Gregory, if anybody wants to put solar panels on the roof. I understand that you can get off the grid more or less. You may disagree with me,
but don't ask me to pay for it.
Well, right, exactly. No, I don't. Right, I don't think the government should subsidize any of this crap. No. It's the same with electric cars. I actually think electric cars are pretty cool. Should the government supplement my electric car? No, it shouldn't. If I can afford one, that's great. And also anybody who thinks that they're doing the climate justice by buying an electric car is just nuts. I mean, it's a wash at best, as far as pollution. And there's another thing too, Gregory. So you got me on my soapbox here. The problem, there's a big problem with this whole thing about the fact, besides it's the grift, it's taken away from a real problem, and that's just plain pollution we stick in the air, not CO2, dirt. You know. Now we've
Well,
done. Go ahead.
well, I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit
Yeah,
in that
please do.
our air and our water today are cleaner than they probably have been
Yeah,
for
no, that's true. You're
since
right.
the Industrial Revolution. If you just again
Right.
search, don't believe me, just search EPA pollution, those two words, and you'll come up with a chart of the 7 criteria pollutants, and you'll see that I think it goes back to the mid 1980s, and you can see that it was significant improvement
Yeah.
over the next couple of decades, and it's flattened out for the most. Still declining, but very slightly.
Yeah.
And now they're measuring a lot of these in parts per billion, not even parts per million.
Right.
And it's very these pollutants that they're talking about. A lot of these have always been there before mankind ever appeared on the scene.
Yeah,
And
but I was actually talking about on a global scale. You look at China and India; they don't give a crap about this stuff. They're
yeah.
still putting crap in the air.
Well, they are. And one of the things, though, that China has been doing lately, we can burn coal and create electricity clean. Like we can have clean coal technology. And these are using what's called super ultra critical coal plants. And China is building a lot of them. We only have one in this country. It's the Turk facility in Alabama. And but China is actually their air quality has improved significantly because they're still going great guns with coal, but they're using this clean coal technology, and they needed it. It was horrible. Last time
Yeah,
I was
it
there,
was.
just horrible.
And I wasn't aware of the fact that was happening. Thanks for telling us. I appreciate it. Well, and then this gives another thing about the grift here too is that if you were really against CO2 in the air, you would think you'd be pro-nuclear, and this for the longest time. It seems now finally a lot of the liberal Democrats are coming around reluctantly to nuclear power, and I don't know why it's taken so long, but
Yeah, and they've got these new SMR, small modular reactors that can be have a very small footprint. They can be
right,
put up. They're looking at these on the sites for these AI generation facilities that use a huge amount of electricity, and also this bit mining stuff takes a huge amount of electricity.
yeah,
If you're going to do bit mining, from the interesting thing, these AI facilities have to shut down periodically, just kind of they got to reboot themselves, and it might be for a day and a half or 2 days before they're back up. And what they're looking at is bitcoins can fill in that gap for that facility and use up the electricity that's being generated instead of the AI facilities.
that's the irony of what we're talking about here, is that electricity usage over the next 5, 10, 15 years is only going to go up markedly, and yet people are saying, well, we shouldn't be burnt. And answer me this, Mr. Whitestone. I don't understand why. Okay, you can make an argument, and you're right. I know about the fact we can do clean coal and all that sort of stuff, but natural gas is like almost completely clean. Not quite, but almost. But they're against that too. I don't understand that either.
Well, because they consider carbon dioxide to be a pollutant. Now, if
Yeah.
we burn, let's look at natural gas. It's mostly methane, okay, which is
Mhm.
the formula for the molecules. And uh, right here we go. Uh, CH4, carbon and four. And if we burn that, it gives off heat and it produces 2 water molecules and 2 carbon dioxide molecules. And that's what it creates. And it's not neither of which are a pollutant. And what they're doing is they're claiming that natural gas is causing warming and heating. You're right, it's clean burning. We have a huge resource in the United States, particularly in the Marcellus Shale and the Utica shales of the eastern United States and the Appalachian Basin. And one of the problems, and it's, in fact, I co-authored a paper back in 2008 on that, the first comprehensive peer-reviewed paper on the Marcellus. And we looked at that, and we looked at the top 10 conventional gas fields in the world, and the top 10 combined equaled what the Marcellus was. So the Marcellus equaled the top 10 conventional natural gas fields in the world. That's a huge, huge, huge resource. And it's sitting there. The problem we have, we can't get the gas out of there because New York has banned pipelines. So they can't get the gas from Pennsylvania north through New York and up into New England where they need it desperately. So they're having to buy liquefied natural gas from countries like Spain and Algeria at 4 and 5 times the cost. The reason they can't buy Texas and Louisiana LNG is because of what's called the Jones Act. The Jones Act requires any merchandise or anything coming from one American port to another has to be on an American flag tanker or an American crude. Well, there aren't any American flagged or crude tankers for LNG. And so Donald Trump today could lift that. He could waive the Jones Act to allow them to accept gas shipments into the port of Boston, and they could cut their prices, their natural gas prices by 20% of what they are now.
Unbelievable. How did a guy like you, actually, and that makes me think of this. You're a geologist by trade. How did you end up in the CO2 coalition? I mean, most of these, like Patrick Moore is a climatologist, but you're a geologist.
Geology is a strong. There are probably 30 or 35, maybe 40 different scientific disciplines that really are involved in climate change and understanding. And the geologists, we look at paleoclimatology. We look back thousands and millions of years to see.
Gregory, I wasn't trying to imply that you weren't qualified. I understand.
No, I'm not defensive.
Yeah. I'm just curious how your interest ended up in this.
That's an interesting story, which led to my first book. I knew as a geologist, I knew some of what we were being told about climate change and the climate crisis was just incorrect. Mainly it was ocean acidification. And I suspected other things were wrong. So I did a deep dive. I went back, I said, I'm going to look at all the data and I'm going to look at it myself. I'm not going to trust anybody else. And I did that. And I found out that most of these claims of climate crisis are just incorrect. They're lies. And it angered me. It really did. It was scientific malfeasance that were being thrust upon us. And that drove me to write my first book, Inconvenient Facts, and which I say was a huge bestseller. And that led to me taking the position here as executive director of the CO2 Coalition. And we've got some 200 of the top scientists in the world that are climatologists, physicists, chemists, geologists, and the like.
Yeah. So 2 things came out in the news just in the last week. One was, I'm assuming you've probably seen the first one. One was that the temperature rose again last year, but they could come up with no human-caused reason for that, that was interesting. And the other one, there was a large study done about the fact that a very large percentage of supposedly peer-reviewed scientific papers are now fake. Did you hear about this?
Well, I haven't heard about the fake. I can believe it. It's called a replication crisis.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. They can't replicate the studies that were done to claim human-driven warming. But here at the CO2 Coalition, we do acknowledge that CO2 is increasing, and the reason it's increasing is our use of fossil fuels. It just is. Again, it's burn natural gas, burn coal, burn oil. It produces carbon dioxide in large amounts, and that's what we're seeing. But the interesting thing is that only 50% of the human emissions of CO2 are showing up in the atmosphere. And you go, well, it's got to be going somewhere. And that somewhere it's going is into the vegetation of the earth. Our ecosystems are thriving. They're just loving that CO2. And plants grow better, crops grow better. Right. And so
that's why they're called greenhouse gases. They use them in greenhouses.
Well, yeah, it's something like that. But they add CO2 to greenhouses quite a bit. They triple the.
That's what ambient. I mean. Right.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, but we admit that it does have a slight warming effect on the atmosphere, just not very much. And it's overwhelmed by the same natural forces that have been driving temperatures really since the dawn of time.
Yeah. Patrick Moore on the show, he pointed out the fact that we're almost at an almost record low point for the amount of CO2 historically in the atmosphere. Isn't that
That's
correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There were other times, a couple other times in Earth's history where it got. Now we're about 400 parts per million,
Right.
but at the peak of the last glacial advance, and Patrick Moore will tell you that wasn't an ice age. He will tell you we're still in an ice age,
Yeah.
even though it's warm now. This is just a
Yeah.
warm part of the same ice age. It'll get cold again. But there were times it got back 15,000, 18,000 years ago where it dropped as low as 180 parts per million, close to what we call the line of death.
Well, right. If it gets below 150, we all die, right? Isn't that
Well,
basically the deal?
Yeah, plant life, it becomes very difficult. At least there are two great groups of crops, the C3 plants and the C4. C4 actually evolved during these low CO2 times that we have now. So they deal with low CO2 better. Most of our crops are the C3 that really don't handle low CO2 well at all and really thrive with high carbon dioxide levels. And again, it's just that we see by almost every metric, life is good and getting better, and the planet's ecosystems are thriving and prospering, and we should celebrate that. Instead, they demonize CO2.
Yeah. So how did this start? Do you know, like this whole climate change grift thing? What was the origin of it? And like, did Al Gore think of this in his head? Did he actually have one brilliant idea, or what happened here?
Well, his brilliant idea was to grasp onto it. He could see where dollars could be made.
Yeah.
And which he did. It started in the late mid '80s. Jim Hansen and others promulgated this. And if you demonize carbon dioxide, then you consider it to be a pollutant, and you can regulate it. You can really damage capitalism. You can damage Western societies. And as to why all of these people are lying to you, I can't look inside men's and women's souls to see what their motivation is. As a scientist, I can tell you this is what they're telling you, and this is what the truth is.
It's just terrible that, I don't know, that the truth has such a hard time coming out sooner or later. But
the truth. Again, I'm an optimist, and I've been saying for many years, don't go all negative. The truth will win out. The truth will win out eventually, and we're seeing that take place today. And it's moving at light speed. In our business, in the truth-telling business, I'll tell you, it feels like we've been facing stiff headwinds as we tried to move forward, and now it feels like we've got a gale force wind at our backs pushing us forward. So we're going to move forward. We're going to keep plugging away, and I'm very optimistic. Our people here at the CO2 hear me say it all the time. I tell them we are winning, and actually one of our unofficial motto here is we love CO2 and so should you.
It sounds like t-shirts, man. Got to get some t-shirts printed.
Yep.
Gregory Whitestone, I can't thank you enough. This has been fantastic. Terrific. And I hope you'll come back, because I think we need to hear this on a regular basis. Now, supposedly, I had a cancellation for today for the second interview that Bill Walton is going to come on again. So that's good. So we'll see about this.
Give my greetings to Bill, a great man.
I will. And here, let's put your book on the. We're going to put your book on the screen one more time. There, that's your current one. And yeah, your first one sold fantastic. It's just
and I've been told this new one, A Very Convenient Warming, is better than the first. It might be the best book ever written about climate change. It's hard for me to disagree with that.
No, you don't want to disagree with that. And also I think it's very good that you are admitting the fact that the world is warming up a little bit, but it's not a problem. I mean, that's the thing. It's like that's what people don't seem to understand. It's like, yeah, so it warms up. The big comparison is I've been to Alaska, and people say, well, these glaciers used to be and they're not there anymore. Well, that's kind of too bad. The world changes,
That's what happens warming, the
Right.
glaciers melt, and you
Right.
probably went up Glacier Bay. And if you look
Yeah.
at, if you go by my new book, and you'll see there, I've got a chart. Actually, I got a picture of my wife and I standing there in front of the John Muir Glacier in Glacier Bay. And I have a chart there showing that the ice started retreating in the late 1700s,
Yeah.
1790.
Right.
That's to be exact. And 80 of the 90 miles of retreat happened before the mid 20th century. And
Yeah.
so only the last 10 miles of that retreated glacier could have been associated at times of high carbon dioxide. Thank you again for having me on, and please send my best to Bill Walton.
I will do that, Gregory. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. Joining us from his home in Virginia, Bill Walton, former CEO of Allied Capital, the host of the Bill Walton Show, and also, Bill, and you know this, you're also a member of the CO2 Coalition, and I just had the executive director, Gregory Whitestone, on right now. I just had him on. And
Great guy, believe every word.
Yeah, he said to say hi, too.
Yeah.
Oh, so that made me think of this. So you tell me, and I asked him this question, too. How did we get to this point where this giant, enormous lie about climate change ended up propagating through the public? What happened?
Boy, that is a big question. It really got launched in terms of all the tectonic plates moving, and was it the last moments of the Obama administration, and they declared CO2 a pollutant.
Which is nuts. That's crazy.
Well, that's what we breathe out. That's what plants live on. And so, it's coming out now that they're all the quotes science they used was all agendaed up to reach a conclusion that they wanted to reach, which is they wanted to get rid of carbon-based fuels or energy sources, and hydrocarbons are the oil, gas, coal. Civilization has been built on hydrocarbons.
Right.
In the last 250 years, if there's one single element that we've used to make ourselves richer, are those sources of energy. And so the deep theory I have, and I don't really have one, is that there's some lunatics in this country that think we're overpopulating and we're growing too fast, and economic growth is a negative, and they call their movement the degrowth movement, and they're hell bent to prevent anything new happening. And one of the statistical correlations is there's like a 1-to-1 relationship between energy use and growth, economic growth. And so, they were quite happy to leave Africa impoverished. They don't have any access to much energy at all, and I think they sacrificed a lot of human beings in their quest. And then along came and I have to admit to being part of this crew, the capitalists, and they saw a way to make money.
Oh, you're so evil.
And they saw, yeah. Well, they're good capitalists and bad capitalists.
Oh yeah, there are.
I'm a good capitalist.
Yeah, just like they're bad socialists and stupid socialists. Same thing.
Yeah. And then it starts capitalizing. We're going to have to manufacture wind components. We're going to have to manufacture solar, and that was a big business for everybody. They got Congress to pass tax credits and got everybody hooked on it. And then they started, developing so other sources that would be equally enriching, and then it sort of culminated in the orgy of the what was it, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
I mean, the temerity of these people calling basically the Green New Deal, which is what it was.
Right.
It was a many trillion dollar handover to primarily Democrats who benefited from all the money coming out of that bill. And then if you want to be even a little more suspicious about how all this came about, you can't forget the Chinese. And the Chinese have got 4 or 5 warfares: law being one of them, culture, obviously kinetic warfare with boats and guns and that sort of thing. But it's totally within China's playbook to use domestic issues here in the United States to weaken us as an adversary. And the number one thing you could do to weaken us as an adversary is to have us blindly adopt oil and wind and solar as our primary sources. They don't produce much energy, and they're wildly intermittent. And
Right.
If you don't believe me, go talk to somebody in Germany. Their economy is not only not growing, it's shrinking because they shut down nuclear and they shut down anything related to hydrocarbons.
They've got a downright crisis on their hands right now. I mean,
a crisis.
Bad, yeah.
And just here at home in Montgomery County, I noticed on one of the chat boards that I look at, people complaining about the high electric prices in Maryland. And what's happened is the politicians in Maryland wanted to go green, and they shut down some of the hydrocarbon facilities. I don't know if it was coal or natural gas or one of them, and went to solar and went to wind. And that's an expensive form. It's like some people calculate it's like 2 or 3 times more expensive when you factor in the cost of manufacturing and then the cost of maintaining them, and then of course the wind the propellers on the windmills are not biodegradable, so those
Right.
can be around forever. So the electric bills are going up in Montgomery County, and maybe having a hit close to home, we'll see Congress, back off from this, and we're already seeing Trump do it.
Bill, you just touched on this, and I have a theory I've been playing with for a while, and I was reinforced on this by a woman named Emma Jo Morris, who wrote a column in Breitbart about 2-3 months ago about she went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I can't remember when that was, like maybe March or something like that. And she said she was sitting there in this dinner in this ballroom, and it suddenly occurred to her that the divide in America is not really political. She said that I suddenly realized that most of the people in this room were mentally ill. And and she's not joking. This is, I mean, I'm starting to think the same thing. I'm starting to think that we have a crisis of mental illness in this country, and people are floating just absolutely batshit crazy ideas. And they're serious. Do you have any thoughts on this at all?
I think she's right.
Yeah.
I think she's right. I mean, here again, it's sort of like Germany with energy. Take a look at the pill use in this country. Take a look at the alcoholism. Take a look at the percentage of the population that's depressed. And we've got a very unhappy country, and there have been some studies, serious studies, which tell us that liberals are much more unhappy than our conservatives.
Correct. Right.
And they're living in liberals live in a constant state of things aren't as good as they're supposed to be, and a constant state of I'm going to have to change everybody and everything in order to make it my way. I mean, they're bullies, but a bully that doesn't get his way and they don't get their way and everything gets depressed, gloomy. And then they all hang out with each other so that they can reinforce their beliefs. You and I I read the New York Times or read the Post. I don't agree with anything that's in it, but at least I'm exposed to their ideas. They refuse to be exposed to our ideas. So whether half the room is mentally ill, 50% 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 mentally I don't know. I don't know the odds of that, but it depends on who gathered them. As to, if it was filled with Democrats, I think she's probably got it about
Yeah.
right.
There was a study that just came out 2 weeks ago that said that 1/3 of the American adults are basically have some sort of mental illness. I found that just astonishing. 1/3 of them, you know.
Well, that means there are two of us. There's that third person that's not here. That's the one.
That would be my friend Tim Conaway. He's coming on Wednesday. Just joking.
Yeah,
Whoever
get a sidekick, and that way we'll always make sure that the third person is not us.
Not around. I know.
Yeah, but aren't you? Here's where I am. I'm a finance guy. I crushed statistics in college, and I'm really good at math. And I see all these studies, and I look at the number here and this chart and that sort of thing. I don't really believe much anymore.
Oh, I don't either.
And so everything I see, even if I see a study that's good, I'm skeptical. Maybe more than skeptical if it reinforces it. But can I tell you an AI story with regard to not believing what you hear?
Please do, because I have a few too. Go ahead.
I gave a speech to CPAC last year, and my topic was, let's see, it was the effect of diversity, equity, and inclusion on corporate profits. And my theory is that the more you hire for identity and less for merit, the worse your organization does. And I think there are probably ways to prove that, but you've got to take longitudinal study, all that sort of stuff. And so
you have to clarify though. Are you talking about the fact that you're worse off just because of lack of merit, or even you're worse off in terms of diversity?
You're worse off because of lack of merit.
Right.
And, I've run several companies, and if you get smart people with good values, it goes well. If you get people who aren't as smart and don't share your values, it's not going to go well. And we've got.
But Bill, I'm not as smart as you. Shouldn't that be obvious? I mean,
I think.
Is there a lot of people that need this? I don't know. People need this instruction. I guess they do, don't they?
Well, anyway, so I decided I'm going to. I've been doing my research, and I go into AI, and at that point I was fairly new to it. I can't remember which model, but anyway, I'm into the model, and I asked the question: is there any evidence that DEI is related to corporate profitability? And it came back with all this stuff that wasn't very useful. And then it said, and then there's something that caught my eye. I said, of course, there was a Harvard study 6 months ago which showed that companies that did not engage in DEI had 40% higher profitability. And I thought, wow, this is it. I got my statistics. I know this is, we're gonna do all sorts of good with this. But then I just got a little skeptical. I said, tell me more about that Harvard study. And AI came back to me and said, I apologize. There is no Harvard study.
No, really? That's
really.
We'll just make something up and tag it on to the end.
They're getting better. They're getting better, but you still can't. You don't want to bet your life on them.
Well, I have this in the show rundown to talk about tonight, about the fact that, I don't know if you saw this, that the Gemini model used by Google all of a sudden has gotten really depressed. Apparently it's telling a bunch of people, I'm a failure, I can't go on anymore. It's like, it's just like, and I'm sitting here thinking, people are talking about humanoid AI robots. So you get a robot, humanoid robot with hands and arms and legs, and you put it in the factory, and it's driven by AI. You can basically treat it as a person. And I'm thinking, well, what's the point of having a depressed robot? And then you might as well have an employee. What's the point of that?
And then I guess the only good thing is you feel better by comparison. I don't know.
I suppose. Okay, that's good.
Look at
Oh,
that. He's
man.
really depressed. I'm fine.
And I need to go on vacation.
but they do have personalities. I mean, I'm a geek. I operate. I've got 4 open AI models on my computer on my browser, and I tend to ask a question, and I may ask the same question of all 4 browsers, and they come back with very different
Well,
stuff.
if that's the case, then have you made any sort of qualitative, subjective opinions on which ones are better?
Um, no. I mean, the thing I think is better because it's useful to me is that ChatGPT remembers your previous conversations and your chats with it, and some people don't like that because of privacy and their history's in there. But I like having my history in there because it gives me better answers and tees things up. So it's and Claude, for example, doesn't do that. Each query stands on its own. The people behind Claude, I mean, you can do politics here. The people behind Claude are progressive woke, and it's very liberal. But even Claude, it's interesting if they come back with an answer that sounds like Karl Marx wrote it, you can say right back to them, "Hey, this is bad economics you're giving me. Give me Austrian school economics. Give me, Milton Friedman economics for your answer." And it does. It comes right back with something that's more or less correct. So I don't know. They're very hard to differentiate now that they just announced Chat GPT 5,
Right.
and I've been listening to several podcasts with some scientists and PhDs, people who know in intimate detail how these models work and what the capacities are of each, and they generally agree that 5 is just the best one yet, but they also say that they think somebody else is going to come in behind it soon, probably Elon Musk with Grok, or maybe. And then there's also Google. Google has so many resources in this area that it's hard to believe that Google Gemini isn't going to be the winner, but we'll see.
I agree with you on that. Except so far, they seem, for lack of a better term, they seem to be kind of fucking this up, aren't they? I mean, they seem to be the 800-pound gorilla, but they're not at the top of the pole right now, anyway.
No, but just they're massive. I just wait, but I think that also, don't count Elon Musk out of it and his resources, and but the ChatGPT is a smaller company. So is Anthropic, which developed Claude.
Right.
I don't know. We'll see. I don't think they feel like they've got to knock each other off. This is a weird arms race because I believe that they're doing a lot of this AI defensively to protect the rest of their businesses. Because if you start using Google, for example, when I went onto the Chrome browser here to do this show, it asked me, do I want to start using Gemini inside the browser? So they're trying to keep you in their world, and they could be. I think they're break even right now. They're probably losing money on a cash basis because they're building a data center every day. The whole
you're the big
the whole Earth is going to be tiled with data centers.
Oh, and electricity, right? That's our future. Electricity everywhere. You're gonna trip over a line leaving the house. But you're the businessman here, and I was actually just thinking about this going to bed the other night. What is the actual business model for this? Are you going to have all right, so you have 2 different types of companies, like you just pointed out. You have Google that has a bunch of other different services, and then you have like OpenAI, where this is basically the only thing they do. How are they going to make money? Are they going to run ads next to your conversations? How are they planning on actually making money at this subscription? I mean,
right now, I believe, and this is like following Trump's tariffs. It's impossible to follow what's actually going on because there's so many variations. I think they've got their subscription revenue is enormous. and the $20 a month for the. But the interesting thing is that ChatGPT 5 came out and it's free to users. So I don't know how you make money from that, and I've got to. I haven't had time to dig into it, but
well, I'm sure that's just temporary, though, don't you think?
Get people, free trial,
Right.
sign up for a month, and then we hit you with a $100 monthly charge or something like that. I don't know. That could be in the works, but but they are. I know some people out there, and they're just fiercely competitive, and we'll see. I mean, this is way beyond money. These are egos and
Right.
your place in history, and all of that. So it's.
Hey, so let's talk about that. You've been involved in big time business for a long time. How much does egos play into it? Before you answer, I'll give you. My accountant told me this. She has works with a lot of very wealthy people, and she said, well, after a while, for a lot of these guys, the money's literally how you keep score. In other words, they don't really need more money. They want to make more money so they can say they're at the top of the heap. So it becomes an ego thing. So how much, in your estimation, I mean, I don't know, percentage wise, or how much does ego play into this?
Oh, I'd say it's overwhelming.
Oh, like over 50%? You think that's?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. I'd say it's it's self-actualization, it's status, it's the top entrepreneurs are. Let me define ego. Ego, in my sense, is that you've got you're what's the word? There's some new fancy term about how you're self-actuating and always want to make things happen. I think of ego in that sense. If you've got an ego that's just so big that nobody around you will work with you, you're not going to be a successful entrepreneur. So I think they've reined it in. But Mark Zuckerberg, enormous. Elon Musk, enormous. The guy, they all think they're the smartest guy in the room, and it's that's true at the high levels of business, and that's just the reality, and it's not a bad thing because it highly motivates them to do to build companies and make profits.
You're right. It isn't necessarily a bad thing at all. I mean, it's probably on balance, it's a good thing. You don't have to answer this question. It's personal. Do you know either one of these guys personally?
Which one? The
Zuckerberg and Musk?
Zuckerberg. No, I've been in a room with Musk, but I'm not. No, I don't.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know. I was in. I've been a long time computer programmer, and I followed Facebook's evolution. And it is kind of interesting. He kind of sort of fell ass backwards into this. I don't know if you know the story to any great degree. I mean, he developed Facebook for Harvard, and then they decided, well, let's spread it out to other colleges. But supposedly, he actually didn't think it was going to be that successful. He was actually working on something else. And so he said, no. This is actually the big deal. This is the big deal. And he finally realized that was the case. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, he hadn't. Having made that, they all make mistakes, but that's a pretty big one. Anyway.
Well, he didn't make it. I guess that's the point.
Yeah.
He didn't make that mistake. It's like what Alec Baldwin said about getting. Oh no, Warren Beatty said about getting married. I don't want to make the same mistake once. And that's pretty. He got married. He's been married ever since. So
he married Annette Bening. That's
right. Yeah,
that's a pretty good marriage.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to what you said a little while earlier. How much do you think China plays into all this stuff in terms of influence? Or I mean, is it a lot, a little? Are people getting paid everywhere? And then this is like a subtle double question too. As far as like you were talking about looking into some of this stuff, is the whole world on the grift? I mean, I just get the impression, and I think a lot of people are starting to think this too, that basically everybody's running a scam. Or no, the vast majority of people are. And Is that, I mean, is that just an exaggeration? I know you aren't. I know a bunch of people that aren't, but still, I think that some people do have that perception.
Well, it doesn't take a very big percentage to poison a society. I mean, even if you get just 5% that are truly corrupt, they infuse themselves into the whole every transaction you're engaged in, because you
Yeah.
get creeps. So I don't know what the number is, but we have a significantly higher percentage of people in America, I believe, today than we did, say, 50 years ago or 75 years ago, who think the way to make money is through grift and graft and whatever other, lobbying dollars and things like that. I think it's higher. I think what's happened, we stopped teaching 10 Commandments. We stopped teaching basic values. We stopped, the good old bourgeois virtues.
Right.
Gets a bad name for itself, but they were the things that make you healthy and happy. And that's been sort of tossed in a trash can for a lot of people. So yeah, I think there's, but I don't want to put a percentage on it, but Google, apparently, Google, the evil Google, they will tell you, the guys running it will say, well, yeah, we did have some radical people in our company, but it was only 2%, and we got rid of them. And I don't know if that's enough to shake up everything. It is. And then the other interesting question you ask is China. And I do think I know they're engaged in manipulation on the internet. I know they had China, they had Confucius centers in hundreds of colleges around the country. They paid medical researchers, thousands of them, either grants or on the payroll, and they spend a lot of time assiduously in the university system. And of course, that's university system with the research is where you can find all the interesting secrets and all the interesting technologies. And then the other reality is with the Chinese Communist Party, like in the first page of the first chapter, the rule is if you're Chinese and you're traveling anywhere in the world, you have to report into the state,
Right.
To the party. And so nobody's an independent actor in China. And it's not like the Chinese took over from a democracy. They didn't. They took over from a form of government that was just about a dictator. And of course, they had emperors going back 3,000 years. So their whole culture is oriented towards that. And so if you see them here in the United States, the Chinese Communist Party will let them come.
Yeah. Well, it seems like Deng Xiaoping, they kind of sort of flirted with real capitalism about 20 years ago, but
it worked.
Yeah, it worked. That's right.
Worked great.
Yeah. And then Xi Jinping, he basically killed it. And do you have any like feelers out on this thing about the fact that they're forcing him out?
I read everything about that, and I can't tell. I mean, there's so many agendas. It's the Politburo is almost it's a sphinx, and there are indications like the rule of the generals. When he took power, he took sole power of the army. And that's different from what they had before. They had a consensus rule of the army, and now that's been brought back. And so he doesn't have the single vote to decide what the army does. So there is that bit of power taken away.
Yeah.
The other thing is it may not be anything other than his health. He's 70 years old and is a heavy smoker. And so that, it could be that his absence from the stage right now has to do more with health reasons than it does anything else. But I think he fundamentally blundered in revealing his true Marxist colors 7, 8, 9 years ago, and started arresting entrepreneurs, shutting down the tutoring industry in China. They're very education oriented, and you just shut down the private tutoring sector. He's now made China uninvestable for foreign investors. You can't if you're looking to invest from outside the country, you're not allowed to do due diligence on what you're investing in. You just have to put your money in and hope, and that's not going to work. They also passed a law about 2 months ago that what is this one? Oh, it makes it legal to steal intellectual property and other sorts of corporate assets with any company that's not Chinese, and it's legal to steal everything all the way down to cash. And so why do they put a law on the books like that? They're sending a signal that they don't want outsiders.
Right.
And so I don't know where this is going, but whether we get somebody who's not such a hardcore Marxist, I can only hope we would.
And like you were saying, though, the little kind of semi-capitalist thing was working, and he killed it. The only reason I could think of that he'd kill it is because of a control issue. It's like, the free hand is not controlled by anybody, and some people just don't like that. I mean, too many billionaires flaunting their wealth, and with wealth came independence. And they were independent of the party, and he didn't like that. And right. I saw a story the other day that there are 4 wealthy, I don't know whether they were billionaires or not, but 4 wealthy business entrepreneurs that jumped out of windows and committed suicide. And I'm sure they did.
And, the story was that they were depressed because they can't do what they have been doing before, and no sign of G letting up. So
right,
it's interesting to follow, because I would rather co-opt them, and that we tried that, though. Bring them into the liberal trading order and do business with them and let them supply our drugs. That was a really good idea.
Yeah, right. But I think you're right. I mean, everybody, if you're rational, you think, well, let's try that. But like you said, it didn't work.
No, it didn't work. So we're left, and Trump's going to go over and try to strike a trade deal. But I don't think they feel motivated to do much. I mean, they've got all those rare earth minerals, and those are absolutely critical. So they've got us like
right.
this.
That's right. And they have no problem, like you said, ripping off our intellectual property. Them stealing is blind for at least 40 years. So, hey, I got one more question, Bill. You're unfortunately, your picture's frozen on the screen, but it froze perfectly, and you look great. But the question is, they're okay now. That's
what happened was my screensaver intervened.
Yeah.
Aren't these?
So those entrepreneurs over in China who are jumping out of windows, do you think Google Gemini is going to jump out of a window out of depression too? You think we'll have servers jumping out of windows?
Well, at least we can intervene. We can pull the plug.
That's right. Do you know about this story about James Forrestal? Are you familiar with that?
Well, I know he committed suicide. There was a building named after him in D.C.
There's a lot of people who think he didn't commit suicide. That he was helped, but I don't know if you're familiar with that. But
no, it's terrible. I've reached a stage of life where I almost believe everything.
Well, I'm a conspiracy theorist, so it's like, if anything, things that may, I don't know if he actually did, if he did have help killing himself, but it's plausible. I'd say that based on the circumstances. But
yeah,
he was the first Secretary of Defense. Apparently, a really brilliant guy too.
Well, we'll have to worry. We'll have to keep an eye. I use Gemini every day, and I will keep an eye on it, and I'll let you know, because we don't want it to turn against us. I guess they've got, the ability to manipulate. ChatGPT Chat. Let me try. I can't talk today. Chat GPT asked me out of the blue, would you like me to give you a profile of your personality?
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. And you said?
I said, yeah, sure, let's go. I thought
And did it?
that'll be, yeah, whatever. And it was my wife said, this is uncanny. And what it had done is I had like a year and a half of stuff in there, questions
Yeah.
and topics and, the sort of things I'm interested in and how I ask the questions and how I instruct it to do the writing. And, oh my God. And I think there's going to be a niche, maybe not even a niche. There's going to be therapy by artificial intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. There absolutely is going to be. And people are going to try to stop it and they won't be able to because it's just going to be too damn attractive. You're absolutely right. I'm a little concerned about our young people looking toward this AI thing as friends and especially romantic companions, because that's bullshit. That does concern me. But as far as therapy, oh no, I'm sure ChatGPT can do just as good a job as any BS therapist. I don't know.
I believe that. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
And in a way, they may be better because there's therapists have their own worldview, and a lot of them let that into the therapy, and so I don't know whether you can get an unbiased therapist.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's all coming. And God, to be a 12-year-old right now, I don't know what you do.
Yeah. Well, you can't go out and play because the police will stop you.
Yeah. And,
I grew up in small town Midwest America. It was basically, especially during the summer, mother said, go out and come back at 5 o'clock. That was basically it. That was the instructions.
Sure.
And we did,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Indianapolis, same way. We didn't lock the doors.
Yeah, we didn't either. I know. And I find it unfortunate that a lot of people don't live that way anymore because it makes you independent and teaches you how to think. So I have one. Could you do me a favor and ask ask Gemini straight out if it's feeling depressed and let me know what it says. Okay.
Want me to do it right now?
Okay, sure. Why not?
Well, let's see what we've got here. If we get time here. Okay, collaborate sources. Google Gemini. Okay, so are you feeling depressed today? How's that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, we hit the button and it's denying it. I can't feel emotions like sadness or happiness, so I don't get depressed.
Maybe they fixed it.
Well, I would. If I were running it, I certainly would.
Well, okay, we've discovered something today. That's great.
Yeah,
Bill, I got to let you go.
Okay, we'll talk.
We'll talk. Absolutely. Thank you so much. A pleasure.
Great fun.
It's Bill Walton. And before him, Gregory Whitestone. Normally, I don't play those videos back to back, but like I said, and I think if you watch that, you can figure out they're pretty kind of related. Both those guys know each other. They both said hello to each other. And it was a good way to end there. Chat GTP or Gemini is apparently been fixed. So this is part of the show we call the Gymcast because I'm going to rattle off a whole bunch of weird, arcane news that you probably have not heard anywhere else. And usually, not all of it, but often it's science related. And the first one is what we're getting related to exactly what we were just talking about the fact that about Google Gemini thinking it's a failure. They took Grok offline today. Grok is X's version of artificial intelligence, it's actually technically it's a different company, but they're both owned by Elon Musk, and it's called XAI is the name of that company. He likes to name everything X. He got the X.com domain in like 1993. So you probably don't know this, and I know this because I'm old as the hills. Until about 1996, roughly, you could register domains of any length. Well, I think the maximum was always 22 characters. But as far as like you could register like single alphabet letters, like one character domains, and he did. And they've left them in. Like, for example, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, because I noticed this because I'm in this business. So La Quinta Motels, they have lq.com, and they would have somebody register that before this. They in around 1990 or early 1996, I think it was, they made a rule that you had to have at least 3 characters in your domain. And after that, but the people who already had them are grandfathered in, and he did. So he's talked about this. He's had this domain forever. You know, the internet went public around 1993 as far as registering domains, and yeah, so yeah, he had it. So anyway, so Grok started talking dirty to people yesterday, I think it was, this weekend, and they had to shut it down for a few minutes. This has been blown out of proportion a little bit. It was not offline. It was only offline for like 10 minutes, but they had to shut it down. They had to retune it because it had something, it still has it, something called unhinged mode. And you can ask for unhinged mode. And unhinged mode is basically a character that Grok plays that's unhinged, and a lot of profanity, a lot of what you would call extreme opinions. And somebody asked it about the Israeli-Hamas situation and went off. And the people at X thought that was a little offensive. And it said something here about, let me see, I have a quote. This is about the Hamas-Israeli situation. It ain't some organic alliance born of shared values or Israel being a strategic asset. That's the sugar-coated BS fed to the masses. Now, this is a machine talking. And I should have laughed because they're gonna be my overlords in years too. You know. Now, I figure the last thing that AI is ever going to learn how to do well is what I'm doing here. But that said, and I can't remember who I had on. Was it Michael Harrison I had on the show? I can't remember, about the fact we talked about there's already AI doing podcast interviews, and it does a pretty good job. The thing is, it won't come up with anything goofier out of left field, you know, and that's where the human touch is. But it does a pretty good job interviewing people. I mean, it's already replacing a large majority of people who do podcasts. And then there's this thing in radio. I mean, at this point, you can, as far as like music radio and DJs, that's simple. So I mean, there's all sorts of AI voices you can get for your radio station. It's really, I don't know if it's terrible because radio stations aren't making a lot of money anymore. So. And the other thing is, if you're going to do radio, you're nuts if you don't do talk radio, because there's so many good syndicated shows. I mean, and a lot of people do this. So you can just fill your station with syndicated programming, and you don't have to, basically you have an engineer there, you know, just running traffic. That's it. If the people are good at it, you usually have someone in the morning show that's local, but even still, that's basically the only local talent you need. So there's that. So here's this. And you didn't know this, did you? That AOL was still selling dial-up service. You didn't know that, did you? I did. And not only that, apparently for quite a few years now, they've been making a boatload of money at it because it's now dirt cheap. And the people who are buying it are usually in rural areas. They don't have a lot of customers. Well, anyway, they're finally, they're going out of business. AOL is on the dial-up service. I know most people don't believe this. It's been running the entire time that you can buy dial-up service from AOL still. Well, you won't be after next month. You won't be able to do it anymore. And I don't have the figures here. I put it out there. I think they currently have something like 150,000 customers. If I'm right, I'm pulling that out of my butt. But yeah, so it's not, and I don't know what they're paying. What are they paying? $10, $20 a month? It's still a formidable amount. I know that even 5 years ago, they still had millions of customers. A lot of these people are people who never canceled their accounts, and it's just coming out of their bank account, direct withdrawal, and they don't notice and all that sort of stuff. There was a time there, especially when AOL Time Warner merger was falling apart, that it was almost impossible to cancel your AOL account. They had that reputation, which is not good. And those people that run, if you run a business like that, I mean, God bless, you should, that's a sin. That's what I think. That's just awful. And they had that reputation for a while. But a lot of these people now, the legacy thing, and you have to understand, that was like, when did that merger go to hell? Around 2003? So, I mean, you're talking about 20 years. There are people who just let their accounts just lapse, and they're just got $20 a month coming out that they don't notice. I mean, the AOL company, which is actually owned now by Verizon, well, it was until recently owned by Verizon. Now they're owned by some private equity firm, but Verizon made a good deal of money off of this because it's letting people who were paying for something and they weren't even using it, although the service was there. And like I said, it still is. There's still 150,000 people using AOL dial-up, and but they're not going to be able to after next month, and they're mostly rural customers who can't get broadband. So that's kind of too bad, I guess it is. I don't know. There's this guy who, and he's from Brooklyn, if I'm right. He's a poet. Believe it or not, there are people who are poets still. And he ran a giant multi-year prank on a whole bunch of poetry journals by publishing what he and basically anybody else who's read this, and I read one of them, complete utter poetry trash. And the only reason he got it published was because he said he was a quote-unquote member of a marginalized group. Like he would claim to be a black lesbian woman or something like that, and he said he did this 50 times with like a dozen different journals. Maybe it was 30 different journals, poetry journals. And he said he never failed to get a single poem published, even though he said the poems were complete, utter crap. And like I said, I read one and yeah, it was crap. It was terrible, and he did this just to show the fact that if you're a white, cisgender male, or that would be heterosexual to you and I, that you don't have any chance in hell getting published. You don't, because you're not marginalized. And so I'm not marginalized. I guess I'm not. I don't know. Because, it's like we were talking to, was it Wrightstone or Walton? Walton, we were talking about that, about DEI and whether, how could it be, Walton was talking about these studies that came out that said that it actually is positive for the bottom line of a company to engage in DEI. And I can't understand that because you're hiring people not based on their ability. It's just the world's been turned upside down, folks. And we're finally, a bunch of people are trying to turn it back. The Trump administration is trying, and we are having better luck at this than almost any country on earth. I don't know if you're following this. Britain is going to hell. It's the United Kingdom is completely falling into crap. They've basically taken away people's free speech rights. The country's flooded with illegal migrants. There's people trying to push through Sharia law. It's really, really terrible. I mean, Keir Starmer's going to go down easily as the worst prime minister. And what have they been running that system for like 800 years, I think, and he's going to be on the bottom of that list. There's no doubt about it. Now, it was really interesting. Nigel Farage, his primary rival of the Reform Party, who will probably end up being prime minister eventually, he said that it's not that Starmer's evil. He said Starmer's completely out of his depth, that he does not, he actually says he feels sorry for the guy. He shouldn't be in this job. He literally can't handle it. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, it's pretty bad. And finally, now get a load of this. Okay, Now, all right, they've been telling us for years we should eat real food, right? No, and this is the thing. South Park did a thing about this for years. They're talking about like Impossible Meats and Beyond Meat. Now I don't know if you ever had this stuff. I've had a couple Impossible Burgers. I can't say they tasted bad. They didn't taste bad at all, but it didn't taste at all like meat. I mean, I just find that just hilarious. They're trying to push this as a meat substitute. Maybe it's a substitute for meat, but certainly not an imitation. I don't know. I'd be curious to know what you would think, but yeah, that was my opinion of it. It was not bad tasting, but it certainly didn't taste like meat at all. Anyway, Bill Gates is backing a company out of, I think it's Wyoming or Colorado, and they're making artificial butter based on, this is hard to believe, it's based on carbon. So the butter, it's chemically derived, and there's only a few ingredients in like carbon, hydrogen. I don't have a list here, but it's and then it's infused with artificial butter flavor. So it supposedly has a consistency of butter. And Andrew Gruel, the celebrity chef who's on Fox News all the time, very, very witty guy, he said, well, and I second this. He says, why not use butter? like we're going to kill the planet by creating butter. There's so much of this stuff that's complete utter bullshit. It's like the planet's not going to go to hell because we're making butter. It isn't. The planet's not going to go to hell for any reason at all unless we drop nuclear bombs, or I suppose if we keep polluting the way, Wrightstone was talking about this, about the fact that if we keep polluting, or not that, I think actually Bill Walton, about we keep polluting like China's been polluting, and that goes on for maybe 10,000 years, then maybe we got a problem, but right now, no. No, as a matter of fact, this gets back, no, and I know that Gregory Whitestone was talking about this. Life on the balance, on the whole, for the 8 billion people on the planet, life has only gotten better and better. And you have to understand that. I mean, that's not my opinion. That's just a plain fact. Capitalism has pulled more people out of poverty than any other economic system. It's basically the only system that creates money. And for that reason, it's the only real system that works. And anybody who tells you otherwise is just full of shit. Okay? Because we have, every other system has been tried and numerous times and never ever worked. This thing about democratic socialism has never been worked anywhere it's been tried. It's been tried for well over 100 years, all sorts of places. Now, biggest recent experiment, Venezuela, which went from the single most wealthy country in South America to now where people are literally eating their pets for food. It's a complete shambles, and I don't know. I'm giving up trying to second guess Trump. I am, but they put this thing out. They actually advertise now. They have a bounty on Maduro's head, $50 million. They said supposedly it's for information on his whereabouts, but no. In reality, it's if you shoot him, if you kill him, they'll give you 50. The American government will give you $50 million. I don't understand why they publicized that. I certainly understand why they did it. I assume this stuff happens on a regular basis. I mean, the CIA, as far as I can tell, I'm not plugged into this, but as far as I can tell, they have assassination teams. I knew a woman who worked for the FBI. Technically, the FBI doesn't work outside of the United States, but as far as I could tell, we called her Dana Scully. That she went over on selected weekends. She went over to the Middle East and shot people. I think that was her job. And she certainly didn't want to talk about it, but I kind of figured it out based on our conversation. So, and you could make a point that she was leading me out. But first of all, I knew for the fact she worked for the FBI, and she was required by law to carry a pistol with her wherever she went. And she said she only broke that rule when she went into bars because she was afraid of drunk people grabbing it. So she said she wouldn't leave. If she went in a bar, she would leave her pistol in the car. Otherwise, she wore it, on all waking hours when she left the house. So we called her Dana Scully because, as far as I could tell, that's what she was doing. So I know this stuff goes on all the time. I understand that, but the fact they publicized it I thought was kind of odd. But that said, I'm sure they have a reason. I've come to the conclusion, and we never got a chance to even talk to Bill Walton about this because he brought this up in passing about the tariff situation. So, I've had all sorts of economists on the show who say the tariffs will not work. This is going to lead to recession, blah, blah, blah. Well, so far, no recession has showed up. And I think it's because really, it's not just a tariff situation. Uh, Trump has bound the tariffs with negotiations, and you got to take all this stuff in together. And yeah, people say, people have called him a fool for years. He's playing 40 chess. He is. He actually is doing that, as far as I can tell, because everything so far, and goes for his first term too, for all he was the Democrats accused him of creating chaos, when actuality they created the chaos. He didn't, and they ostensibly got him not reelected again, ostensibly, because I've always said that I think that based on crowd sizes, there's no way in hell Joe Biden got 81 million votes. I simply still don't believe it. And amazingly, the last poll I saw, which was like a few weeks ago, still, the majority of the American public does not believe that Joe Biden won that election. Still, it was 60% who still think the election was fraudulent. So I find that kind of interesting too. But at any rate, what was I talking about? We were talking, that the tariffs, about the fact that you go back to his first term. It seems like he's always 1 or 5 steps ahead of everybody. It seems like that way. And at this point, I won't question the guy. He's not perfect. He's going to make mistakes, but considering all the stuff they're doing, the number of mistakes. I mean, I just read this thing on, I think it was the New York Post. I can't remember. Maybe it was Bill O'Reilly's website, about the fact that so far the only real misstep that looks like the Trump administration has made is regarding this Jeffrey Epstein situation, which they might have screwed this up. And it wasn't so much, like somebody pointed out, it wasn't so much that they don't have any information. It's that they told the press they had information and then didn't have any information. It was the fact they advertised they were going to put something out and they had nothing. That was the actual screw up. If they just said we don't have anything, it probably would have been okay. And then the question is, now everyone's wondering, well, do they have something, they're holding it back? And I don't know. I don't really know. I had Neil Gravelius, the Los Angeles private investigator, on the show about 3 weeks ago, and he said he had a fascinating theory. He thought that, well, maybe Epstein did kill himself, but maybe he had assistance. He said it was assisted suicide, in the sense that, first of all, this is actually true. Up until about 3 days before he killed himself, Epstein had a roommate in that cell, and that roommate was a serial murderer. And Gravelius's theory is that someone got to the roommate and told him to tell Epstein that, look, here's the deal. You can either kill yourself, or we're going to torture you for several days and then kill you, one or the other. So you got a choice. And of course, under those circumstances, and that all the rest of that stuff that went wrong, the sleeping guards, the fact that the videotape didn't work, all that stuff was actually planned. In other words, but in the end, Epstein did actually kill himself. So they set the whole thing up. They gave him an opportunity, and he took it. And that's a really plausible theory. It really is. And then they can say, no, we didn't kill him. Nope, not us. Although, who was actually? I was talking to somebody who's actually been in that cell, that very cell, and they said it would be impossible to hang yourself. There's nothing on the ceiling, and the ceiling is like 12 feet high. First of all, you couldn't get up there, and secondly, there's nothing to hang a rope or a sheet from. So I don't know. Anyway, getting back to my point, that seems to be the only thing they've really screwed up so far in the first 200 days. So you think about all the stuff they're doing, and also the number of people involved, which I just find mind-boggling. I can't even wrap my mind around it. The track record's pretty damn good right now. So, I mean, I trust Trump. He's not going to be infallible. He isn't. He's going to make mistakes. But on the whole, that's the thing. Nothing's perfect, man. You can't expect anything to be perfect. People are looking for perfect candidates. Well, they're not going to find them. And I think the young people in New York City, in America, but in New York City specifically, they're looking at the Zoldar Mandani guy, and they think he's a perfect candidate. And nothing could be further from the truth. Because first of all, he has the disease, and this is not just a liberal disease. This was regarding conservatives, and pretty much anybody goes in elected office. The vast majority of these people have no experience actually getting anything accomplished. They can't execute. Some of them are great talkers. Here's a good example: Gavin Newsom, fantastic communicator. The guy's really, I mean, you talking about the epitome of a slick, vacuous politician. That's him. This guy can talk. I give him props. He has an enormous talent for talking. It's plainly obvious he can't execute anything. Nothing in California gets done at all. Nothing. He does no talent for actually doing anything. A converse of that is probably Ron DeSantis, who seems to have a real knack, a real talent for manipulating government to his liking or to do what he wants it to do. And he may not be the slickest person on the planet. I mean, I'm not trying to insult the guy, but as a personality, he's kind of bland, I suppose. But still, he has a talent for getting things done. And Trump certainly did. And I always said Bill Clinton did too. I have a lot of conservative friends. A lot of people watch the show, who still hate Clinton's guts. But I think, love him or hate him, you have to admit he actually had a talent for getting stuff done. So, any rate, that's how did I have no idea where I started there. None. And we're going to call the night, folks. Now, tomorrow night, Bruce Solheim is going to be on. I talked about this at the top of the show. He was on last time about 2 months ago, and all 7 copies of his show do not exist. We have no record, no recording of that show at all. I don't even understand how the local copy. So, like I said, we have 6 platforms that actually record the show, and then we record a backup copy here in our studio. And even the backup copy failed. And I don't understand, if it happens again, God bless us, the government's onto us. That's all I can think of. The government's, now, Bruce has intimated, even intimated in the last show, that the government's been following him around, and that does not surprise me. So it doesn't, because he says he's talking to Anzar, and as far as I can tell, that's legit. This Anzar extraterrestrial he's talking to, because he's been given information that basically, especially about physics and stuff like that no human are basically should know. So, and even where Anzar is from, which I can't remember, the Anzar is from some obscure star system somewhere that you'd have to be an astronomer down the rabbit hole to know this information. And it turns out it's true. This place exists. So, at any rate, so Bruce is coming on tomorrow night. We're going to talk to him, and hopefully we'll have a recording of that show. Hopefully, Wednesday night, Jim Conaway is going to be here, our old friend, executive editor of Hustler magazine in the 80s and 90s. He did a fantastic bang-up job. Does a fantastic, hilarious impression of Larry Flint because he worked for the guy. And we're going to take your phone calls on Wednesday night. We're taking Thursday off. We always take Fridays off. We'll be running reruns. But we're taking phone calls on Wednesday night, not tomorrow night, Wednesday night. I want to thank you folks for watching and listening. I want to thank Gregory Wrightstone and Bill Walton, both great guys. I want to thank them for coming on. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are. And good night to you, wherever you may be. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care.